Do I have to drop my Series 7 if I go RIA? That is today's question on the Transition to RIA question and answer series. It is episode number 121. Hi, I'm Brad Wales with Transition to RIA, where I help you understand everything there is to know about why and how to transition your practice to the RIA model. If you're not already there, if you head on over to transitiontoria.com, you can find all of the resources I make available from this entire series in video format, podcast format. I have articles, I have white papers, all kinds of things to help you better understand the RIA model. Again, transitiontoria.com. Well, Dan, today's episode is something I'm asked fairly frequently of, hey, if I were to go or transition my practice into the RIA model, do I have to drop my Series 7? So as just a quick reminder, and for some of you that are maybe newer to the industry that might be listening to this or watching this, there's, as a financial advisor in our industry, most financial advisors, and by the way, there's, unlike other industries like attorneys and doctors, there's no defined definition of what a quote-unquote financial advisor is. We've kind of commonly accepted it to mean certain things, but there's no specific requirements. When I talk about financial advisor, I think we all know what I'm talking about, but just a little clarification there. But most quote-unquote financial advisors nowadays at any of the big firms or whatnot that you could think of, most of them nowadays are wearing two hats. They are wearing the hat of a registered representative. That means they have their Series 7 with a broker-dealer, and it is the Series 7 license that enables them to become a registered rep with the broker-dealer, which enables them to offer commission-based solutions for their clients. The other hat they are often wearing is that of an IAR, an investment advisor representative of usually the broker-dealer's affiliated so-called corporate RIA. To get to become an IAR, it varies by state, but in most instances, the way advisors get there is by taking the 65, maybe the 66, and there's actually some instances where if you have a CFP somehow, if you had that before a 65, that usually is a qualifier as well. But it's the 65, 66 that enables you to offer fee-based or advisory accounts to clients. So you provide services for them for a fee. And again, most advisors nowadays wear both those hats. Back in the day, decades ago, most all advisors were just pure brokers. They were solely had that Series 7 hat on. They were solely a registered representative of a broker-dealer, and everything was done on a commission transaction. Over time, as the industry has evolved increasingly and now majority on the fee side of the house, those broker-dealers added a corporate RIA to their offer and enabled it possible for their then only their registered rep only brokers to say, hey, you can also now offer fee-based products, and here's what it takes from a licensing perspective, whatnot. And now we kind of just collectively refer to advisors as financial advisors, but most of them are wearing both those hats. So the question is, that's probably you. You're probably in that boat, or maybe you have both those hats on. And so the question is, if you were to go into the RIA model, are you forced to drop your 7, forced to drop your affiliation with broker-dealer? Now, some of you are absolutely ecstatic about the idea, the thought about getting out of the broker-dealer world, getting out of the FINRA world, simplifying your life. It's crazy how our industry operates. That there's one set of rules when you're wearing that broker hat. There's another set of rules when you're wearing that IAR, the investment advisor representative hat. And so many of you are already wanting that to be part of this process. But for some of you, and we're going to get into that, maybe because of the composition of your practice or whatever the circumstances, you're not ready, at least near term, to want to do that. And the question is, are you forced to drop your 7? And so the short answer, and there's some nuances which I'm going to get into, the short answer is no. If you are at currently a wirehouse, a regional firm, an independent broker-dealer, whatnot, and you say, hey, I see all these folks going RIA, Brad's doing all these episodes on this, might that be for me? But hey, maybe I don't want to drop my 7, or I don't think I can drop my 7. will I be forced to? And so the short answer is no. However, there are many RIAs out there that are 100% fee only. So they have chosen to set up an RIA, or if they're one that attracts RIAs to it, to have them join, that says, hey, we are 100% fee only. We do not do anything on a commission basis, whether it's a broker-dealer product or even insurance product. We are 100% fee only. And in that case, those folks do not have their 7. They solely have their 65, or again, maybe it was 66 if they had got it originally back in a broker-dealer type setting. And there are fee only. So that absolutely does exist. However, there are quite a few, and I don't have the breakdown of the stats, RIAs that, and this is quite normal, that say, hey, as an advisor, if I'm perhaps starting my own RIA, where I have a team and we're doing this, whatever the case is, hey, we do have some amount of, often thought of as legacy commission assets that's sizable for our practice. They're meaningful to the client, and we can't just simply walk away from that or whatnot. So there are ways, I've done several episodes on this, as a way to accommodate your commission assets. I actually just did a recent episode on this on kind of how to manage your remaining commission assets while moving to the RIA model. I encourage you to check that out. But the idea being, it's absolutely possible to, in its most simplest form, set up your own RIA. You put all of your fee accounts under that, your advisory accounts under that, and you work with, there's a couple different solutions, but as an example, a so-called RIA-friendly broker-dealer, and there's only a couple of them in the space, but they say, hey, our business model is you go start that RIA, you do your fees over there, you keep 100% of that, you run your own P&L, blah, blah, blah. We know you have a need for commission, your commission assets to be housed and serviced, and we will be your broker-dealer for that. Here's the payout on that, and here's kind of how the arrangement works. So that absolutely exists. Now, the one caveat I would say on that, and this is like a lot of things that you have to think through when potentially transitioning to the RIA model, those friendly broker-dealers do have minimum requirements. Because they are not taking an override on the advisory assets, they're only making their money on your commission assets. So they typically do have minimum production levels on the commission side for them to be willing to accommodate you, because they're only going to take a scrape off of that. And that just simple, that math needs to make it worth their while. So my point is just saying is that option is out there. There are some caveats that you would have to understand with it to know if it might work for your practice. In kind of along this theme, I would tell you a lot of the advisors and teams I talk to, they aspire to become 100% fee only. They maybe say, hey, yeah, that is the end game. We think that ultimately might be better for clients. We know that will be easier for us as the advisors. And some are able to do it as part of the transition, either because they're already almost entirely fee-based now, and it's just whittling down that last few percentages of commission assets, or they're willing to convert a lot of things as part of the transition. So some say, hey, I'm going to do this as part of the transition. Others say, hey, I can't, that's a bridge too far for the transition, but I aspire to get there eventually. So the question is, how do you whittle that down? Again, I did an entire episode recently, so I'm not going to rehash it all here. Check that episode out. But just to give you a few brief answers, there's ways you can look at, oftentimes those commission assets are legacy variable annuity positions, and the advisor team maybe adopted the client that already, or that they brought on a client that already had a variable annuity, or they did use commission-based variable annuities with those clients in the past. And often what I hear is advisors say, hey, yeah, that worked, that was a good solution. I don't plan on doing any new commission variable annuity business. I might look at the fee-based versions of variable annuities going forward. I don't plan on doing any new business, but hey, we do have this large amount of existing positions, and they pay a meaningful trail coming off of that. So it honestly doesn't make sense just to walk away from it, let alone usually those same clients that have the variable annuity also have a position or a account with you on the fee-based side. And so there are techniques to potentially convert some of those things to fee-based accounts. Or in the case of, I also hear of folks that say have, it's A-share mutual funds or C-share mutual funds that they've sold. Well, hey, those can typically be put in a fee-based account and converted to institutional class shares. There's ways you can manage concentrated stock positions or cash management things. And more often than not, when I'm talking to advisors, and this is a big part of what I ask, is to understand a team's or advisors' practice, to say, okay, what is in that asset commission asset bucket? And more often than not, there's solutions and pathways to essentially migrate that to the fee side in ways to, as I often say, solve for that. And so more often than not, as I start walking through advisors, they end up taking that a path, and they say, okay, hey, I actually am going to maybe go 100% fee only because there is a way to solve for all of these pieces. That said, I realize that's one, maybe not appealing to some advisors. They just don't desire to do that. They just like the status quo. Two, it again might be a bridge too far. There's so many moving parts involved in a transition, trying to also convert those positions or manage them to fee-based side is maybe too difficult. And three, not an exhaustive list, for some of you, that is a very meaningful revenue source. I mean, I've talked to advisors and teams that have, for instance, variable annuity positions that are paying off hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in trails. That's very meaningful. It's not just a simple thought process to say, oh, let's just change that or convert that or whatever. That's not to say that there's not ways to still generate revenue off of those positions, perhaps, but that's much more easier said than done when you're talking large numbers. So the main kind of thing is know that you could aspire to do it, but you are not forced to do it as from what's available out there in the marketplace. So you're not forced to drop your 7 if you don't want to. Now, with that said, I would tell you, while there's solutions with RIA-friendly broker-dealers, there's solutions to maybe convert things, all that sort of thing. The RIA model is meant for advisors and teams whose practice are predominantly fee-based, whether near-term or long-term. Again, you don't ever have to be 100% fee-only if you don't aspire to, but that's what the model is best can accommodate. And so, as an example, I typically tell folks, your practice needs to be 70% plus or so fee-based currently to be considering the RIA model. If you're, for instance, 50% fees, 50% commission, in theory, some of these solutions will still work. In theory, we could talk it out. In theory, you might even choose to follow that. But the reality is, for your practice, if you're 50-50, that's what the independent broker-dealer model is out there for folks that say, hey, broker-dealer business is big part of my practice. I do want to be independent, but I do need a broker-dealer. And so if you're in that 50-50, or certainly if you're more commission than fees, that independent broker-dealer model is going to be your best bet, if you want to have an independent path. But once you start getting that 60 plus, 70% plus fee-based, then you got to be looking at the RA model and saying, hey, is that the better path for me? That's what's meant for an advisor like me that is predominantly fee-based, but how might I still be able to accommodate those commission assets and not be forced to drop my Series 7? So some of you, again, will need or want your Series 7 for the long term. And as I've noted, there's pathways to be able to achieve that. What I would tell you, and leave you with 2 final thoughts here, and for those of you that think back to when you took the 7, and this was one of the items on there that was discussed, it used to be, up until just a few years ago, that if you left a broker-dealer, and so that would, quote-unquote, drop your 7 at that point, if you didn't reaffiliate with another broker-dealer within 2 years, you would, quote-unquote, lose your 7. Right, so the 7 at the end of the day is just an exam. It's kind of a qualifier, but the idea being, if you took your Series 7, you passed it, you became a registered rep of a broker-dealer, at whatever point if you left that broker-dealer, that 7 kind of still stays active out there, and you had a 2-year window to reaffiliate as a registered rep with some other broker-dealer, which would then start the whole clock over again if you left that firm. And that was a way to kind of keep your 7 safe. FINRA, just a couple of years ago, it's FINRA who governs all this, came out with a new policy for a couple of different reasons, but recognized that 2-year window was maybe too short. And like one example they gave is if someone had to step away from the industry to handle family situation, maybe health situation, whatever, and all of a sudden 2 years passes and now they have to retake this whole test. Again, that's just one example that I heard them put out there. So now they have come up with this program, and I gotta make sure I say it correctly. It's the Maintaining Qualifications Program, the MQP, that says, hey, if you leave a broker-dealer, you now have 5 years to reaffiliate with a broker-dealer, or you will lose your 7. Now, unlike the old version where you could leave and just not have to do anything for 2 years, and then you can reaffiliate and you're good, under the MQP, you still have to do a couple things. You have to pay an annual fee every year. Last time I checked, I think it was $100, so fairly nominal. And you have to continue doing your industry regulatory continuing education every year. And so there's a way, if you drop your 7, leave a broker deal in your new path, your new RA situation does not have, for instance, a friendly broker dealer, whatever, you now have a 5-year window, provided you got to do the continuing education, whatever. You now have a 5-year window before you're at jeopardy of losing your 7. And so I tell folks, if you've gone on your new path and you've gone 5 years without the need for that Series 7, that broker-dealer relationship anymore, at that point you can feel rest assured that, okay, I'm not going to need it going forward. So now I can, without too much stress, just essentially let it lapse and I move on from that. So just know, it used to be 2 years, now it's 5 years, but there are some caveats. You got to do some stuff to keep it active. But now that's a much bigger window before it could become an issue where you lose it altogether. And then the final point kind of relates to that of losing it. And I would tell you, this is a mental hurdle for many advisors out there that I talk to. And I get it. I had my Series 7 at one point. I took the test. I realized it's not a fun test to take. It's not a fun test to study for. But for many of you that are increasingly fee-based or almost now entirely fee-based, there are advisors out there that still can't bring themselves to, quote unquote, give up their 7, even though they're functionally not even using it. I mean, they might be at a wirehouse firm or an independent broker-dealer. And again, under those circumstances, you're wearing both those hats. You're technically under the firm's broker-dealer and the firm's RIA. But in practice, if you're just extreme example, 99% fee-based or maybe even 100% fee-based, you're not even using your 7. You're not even using the broker-dealer side. And there's some advisors that just can't move on from it because of just the mental part of losing their 7 that they worked so hard for 25 years ago. And I mean, I'll talk to advisors that are at independent broker-dealers. They are already independent. They are already running their own business. They're already able and willing to take on all the local responsibilities of doing that. Their practice is literally 100% fee-based at that broker-dealer, so they don't even need the broker-dealer side of things. They're only under the RIA side of things, and they can't, and I say, why are you not going into the RIA model? Your practice, by definition, is what the RIA model is for, and they can't bring themselves to give up the 7. And so they stay at that independent broker-dealer. They stay giving this payout to the broker-dealer just because of that mental part of the 7. And again, I can relate. I took it. I moved on and changed my career. I actually entered the MQP, did that for, I think it was like 3 years. And then I realized, okay, I'm not going to need the 7 again. And I got sick of doing the continuing education. So I stopped before the 5 years, even though I could have gone 5 years. And so just, I encourage you to not let the mental hurdle get there. You are going to give it up one day when you retire. So if you don't need any more in your practice to go in a different direction, don't handcuff yourself just because you don't want to lose this exam you took 25 years ago that you're not even effectively using anymore or maybe don't need to use anymore going forward. The world has changed. The industry has changed. That's fine. It's evolved to the point you likely don't need it in many instances. So just that's a final thought I want to leave you with on that mental hurdle I often encounter. So with that, like I said at the top, my name is Brad Wales with Transition to RIA. This is the sort of thing I help advisors with, is understand, hey, what's your practice look like now? What would a transition into the RIA model look like? In this case, is there a commission component we need to consider? Would you be maintaining that near term, long term? Would you be going ripping the Band-Aid, go full 100% fee only all at once? Helping you understand how that works, how the options work, what other advisors are doing. That's the sort of thing I talk to advisors all day long with. Happy to have that conversation with you as well. First things first, though, head on over to transitiontoria.com. Again, you can find all the resources I make available from this entire series in video format, podcast format. I have articles, I have white papers, all kinds of things to help you better understand the RIA model. But at the top of every page is a contact link. If you click on that, you can instantly and easily schedule time to have a one-on-one conversation with me. Happy to chat about today's topic or anything else, again, RIA related you'd like to talk about. Again, head to transitiontoria.com. With that, I hope you found value in today's episode, and I'll see you in the next one.